my duty to announce we have an executive session at 6:30 this evening to discuss personnel and legal issues. Everyone, please stand for I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd just like to, I know we have a requirement about masks. The reason I don't have one on, I had cancer removed from my right lung. It's very difficult for me to breathe through a mask and also talk. So I'm not wearing it for protest or anything like that. I do have a serious medical condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCollum. Mrs. Bronski, call the roll, please.
Mrs. Kozer? Here. Dr. Loughlin? Here. Mrs. Maines?
Here.
Mr. McCommons?
Here.
Mr. Music?
Here.
Mr. Palmer?
Here.
Mrs. Surratt? Here. Dr. Zorch?
Here.
Mr. Hauser?
Here. Solicitors report, Mr. Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the community and members of the school board, I would like to update you on the most recent developments, which now aren't so recent. But I'd like to just review the order that came from the Department of Health and my research into the position that I believe the board has been put in and the recommendation that I feel that I have to make to the board. In order to do that, I'd like to just review the history of where we are as a board with respect to the mask mandate. On July 27th, this board issued its health and safety plan, which did not include a mask mandate and in fact made masks optional. In the middle of August, we got word from the CDC that there was a recommendation for masks. We also had word from the Pediatrics Association that there was a recommendation for masks. At that point, this board was concerned and had extensive discussions once again as to whether or not the mask mandate should be instituted. Ultimately, there was a motion that many of you were present for, that the elementary students would have a mask mandate. And the reason for that was that the older students and obviously the staff had the opportunity to get vaccinated, but the younger children had not. And there was extensive discussion in the public at that time in the third week of August. And there was an extensive discussion amongst the board members, and ultimately there was a vote that was 4-4, so that the proposal failed. What that meant was that we were going to start school mask optional with a continual review of the numbers, both in the county and in our school district. The ultimate goal has always been to keep school open. We don't want school closed again, and the board did not want to do virtual school again. So we had planned to open school, and in the beginning of September, we got an order from the acting Department of Health that instituted once again a mask mandate, and that mask mandate was to take effect September 7th. As they say, that's water under the dam. We can sit here and we can talk about how poor the timing was and how difficult it was for us to have to switch gears again. But that seems to be what this board has had to do throughout the pandemic, and so we looked at the order. And I want to tell you, when the order came out, as the solicitor, I looked at that order very carefully. During the press conference that the governor and the Department of Health held, they cited a number of state laws that they believe gave the Department of Health power to issue this mask mandate. In the meantime, there has been a lawsuit filed by members of the Senate Republicans and by a couple of school districts to the Commonwealth Court challenging the mask mandate. And I'll discuss that in a bit. But when I first heard of the order, we got it online right away, and one thing I wanted to look at was what were the laws that were cited in this order? What was raised as a justification for this order? And did I, as the solicitor, have any reason to believe that the order was somehow patently unconstitutional or a mistake? Because make no mistake about it, it was an order. And for example, we opened with masks optional even though the CDC had issued guidance that said that everybody should be masked. My feeling as a solicitor, and I think the feeling of probably a majority of the members of the board, though certainly not all of them, was that the CDC guidance was, as the name implies, guidance. It wasn't an order, and you know the CDC is making this vast guidance for the whole country, whereas we're looking at local situations. And so guidance is one thing, but Department of Health order is another. The Department of Health cited authority from a number of state laws and state statutes. And if you bear with me, I'm just going to kind of read through and review them very quickly. They cited the Disease Prevention and Control Law. So I looked it up. What does this law say? The law specifically allows the Department of Health to carry out control measures. Sorry, I get glasses in my mask and you know I'm fogging up here. But the law specifically allows the Department of Health to carry out control measures in such a manner and such a way as to take care of and prevent disease, and it includes, among the control measures, isolation, quarantine, or any other control measure. Now I have to look at that and say, look, if you can isolate and if you can quarantine, you can probably ask somebody to wear a mask in a school. But in any event, that's what the law says. The second law that they cited was the General Health Administration Law. And this law says as follows: the Department of Health shall have the power and its duty shall be to protect the health of the people of this Commonwealth and to determine and employ the most efficient and practical means for the prevention and the suppression of disease. There's a regulation that the Department of Health has entitled Disease Control Measures, which says the department, and that's the Department of Health, the department or a local health authority shall direct isolation of a person with a communicable disease or any other disease control measure that the department or local health agency considers to be appropriate for the surveillance of disease when the disease control measure is necessary to protect the public from the spread of infectious agents. So the statutes that were cited by the Department of Health, obviously, as I reviewed them, gave the Department of Health the authority to take measures to protect the public from disease. Now, the other question that I had to ask myself, and I'd like to discuss very briefly, is where do we stand with respect to the constitutional amendments which were passed by the public by about a 2-to-1 vote last year? And the constitutional amendment that was passed limited the governor's to declare a major emergency for more than, I believe, 20 or 21 days without calling the legislature into session and getting the extension of that emergency approved by the legislature. And quite frankly, that is now an issue before the Commonwealth Court, and we'll get to that. But I looked at the constitutional amendment, and it states that a disaster emergency declaration may be declared by executive order or proclamation of the governor upon finding that a disaster has occurred, or that the occurrence or threat of a disaster is imminent that threatens the health, safety, and welfare of this Commonwealth. A disaster emergency declaration under subsection A shall be in effect for no more than 21 days unless otherwise extended in whole or part by concurrent resolution of the General Assembly. So at this point, I reviewed the definition that they call a disaster emergency declaration, and they talk about it. Disaster, whether it's a natural disaster, military emergency, public health emergency, technological disaster, or other general emergency as defined by statute. At this point, the governor has not issued the order that we're facing as a school district that was issued by the Department of Health, although that is certainly an executive department. The order that the governor issued last year was a sweeping order. It was an order that related to business closure, to sheltering in place, to schools, to churches, to athletic events, to events in public with more than 25 people. You all remember it. That was the order that was in place. I see a difference between that order and the masking order, although that's going to be decided by the courts. Now, what I'm telling you as my school board is that I do believe that there are statutes in place which arguably provide the Department of Health the power to do what they're doing. There is a claim that they haven't followed the appropriate regulatory process, and there's a claim that they're trying to get around the constitutional amendment. That will be decided by the courts. But at this point, for me to tell you to violate a Department of Health order for the health and safety of students, I would need some type of conclusive legal conclusion that in my mind would allow me to do that. And I do not find that here in the statute, nor in the language of the amendment to the Constitution. Moreover, there are a few school districts that have refused to follow the order, and I would note that those school districts have been put on notice by the Department of Education of potential outcomes that can come from failing to follow the order. And those potential outcomes and a copy of the redacted letter that was sent to other school boards has been shared around the state by the IU directors. And so you as a school board have also been put on notice. Now, among the things that are noted is that a failure to follow the order is a violation of the law, the Disease Prevention and Control Law. They note that the Department of Ed notes that every day that a violation occurs, you may be charged for that violation financially each day, and you may be charged for each student and staff member in the school district. So although the fine itself is not great, when you add all of your members, all of your enrolled students every day, there is a concern there. You also expose your administrators to possible certificate revocation for failing to follow the law. And moreover, they have concerns about liability. You as a school district have what's called sovereign immunity in many instances, and that means that there are only a limited number of times that you as a board member and or as a school board can be sued. However, the law has an exception to sovereign immunity, and that is when you commit willful misconduct. And the warning from the Department of Education is that they believe, and I think it's a good argument. I do tort cases against school districts, and I've been in this statute before, that if you commit willful misconduct by violating an order of the Department of Health, then you could expose the school district to liability. And in many instances, under the state law, you have a limited liability cap of $500,000, but if you get outside that cap and commit willful misconduct or a violation of the law, you could expose the school district to an unlimited liability. So if somebody dies in school, or if a student gets into a situation where we've heard about these long haulers who are in the hospital, maybe in a ICU for 2 or 3 months, you could be into millions of dollars. And you say to yourself, well, we do have insurance, but as the Department of Ed correctly notes, most insurance policies have an exclusion within the insurance policy that says if you commit a crime or violate the law, then you don't have insurance coverage. Many insurance policies have an exclusion that says if you commit some type of willful or intentional violation of standards, you may lose insurance coverage. So I point this out to you because I think it's very important for you to know that. In truth, we have not talked to our insurance company about that. I don't see any need to at the time. Now, I will point out that there is currently litigation that has been filed with the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania. The Commonwealth Court, for those of you that don't know, is actually an appeals court. And normally, a case has to start at our local common pleas court up in Greensburg or whatever capital of your county is. And then once that goes through a hearing or a trial or briefing schedule, then an appeal goes up to the Commonwealth Court. The case that has been filed is filed by the Republican senators and also, I believe, by Butler School District and 1 or 2 other school districts. And it is currently being briefed at the Commonwealth Court. And the advantage to this situation is that the Commonwealth Court is a statewide appellate court. And so the beauty of the situation is we are going to get some answers, and when we get those answers, it won't be like we have one in Westmoreland County and one in Philadelphia County and one in Fulton County. We're going to get a statewide outcome that we can look at, and at that time, depending on what the outcome is, the board will certainly review the decision they make tonight. So I think it's an advantage. Some people are saying, I've been asked over at my other school district, Gary, are you going to jump into this lawsuit? Are you going to get involved? And I must tell you that I don't know that there are 5 votes to do that, but I wouldn't recommend it because it will be nothing more than wasted legal fees. We have good attorneys, as I can see, on both sides of this issue who are in the process of filing their legal briefs, and they will have oral argument in front of the Commonwealth Court, and we'll get a decision. And it will be a decision that we can all look at and utilize. So, sorry for going on so long, but that is the legal landscape here. Now, I know that there are a number of board members who originally did not favor the mask mandate, and some who did. As your solicitor tonight, I have to advise you that there is an order that I cannot call an invalid order. I believe it's a valid order as we sit here today. it could be ruled differently. But I do believe at this point that the recommendation that I am compelled to make to you, and I don't have any hesitation in doing so from a legal perspective, is that for the time being, this board should follow the order of the Department of Health and should comply with the contents of that order. And if any board members have any questions, I'd be happy to. And that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Naples. At this time, I'd like to open the floor up to hearing of visitors, part 1. This is where anyone in the audience can come to the podium. You can come to the podium, state your name, address, and comment about anything that is on the agenda this evening. And at the end of our meeting, there will be another one where you can speak of any concerns you have with the district.
Hi, my name's Holly. I have 2 children in Charlotte, about Human High School. I have a question for you guys tonight, and I'm totally against these masks. I think they're ridiculous, and I will get to that later. But how many of you wear a mask 7 to 8 hours a day, continuously? Okay.
I worked in the emergency department for
I understand that, and I've seen
20
you.
years.
I've seen you in
And many
emergency.
days where I wore a mask continuously for 12 hours a day.
I worked medical for 16 and a half years, okay? I can tell you, I work with doctors who take them off as soon as they come out of the room and they take a breath, okay? So, on your ride to school, you walk out of your door, you get on the bus, in your vehicle, you drive to work, you wear the mask the whole way. You wear the mask walking into the school, into your job. You wear your mask all morning except maybe to get a drink. As you take it off for lunch, you put it right back on. You get a drink maybe a day, you pull it down, put it back up. And then you walk to your car, you still wear it. You get in your vehicle, you get on the bus. You wear it the whole ride home. None of you are doing this. I can tell you, as soon as you step out of that school, you're pulling your mask down. Our kids are not. Okay? It's breaking my heart. In my opinion, this is abuse. It's abuse to have healthy individuals breathe their own CO2 for 70 hours a day. As superintendent, assistant superintendent, and all members of the school board, you may not agree with one another or us, the parents, but you all need to do what you were hired to do and elected to do, and that is what is best for our children. You work for us, the taxpayers, I know you believe your hands are tied, and you have to do what the state tells you to. But since you're already scared, you need to act. I want you to do this one thing for me. You need to meet with all of your teachers. You need to get on the same page. You have some teachers who are amazing and recognize that these kids need math braces throughout the day. They make sure that they get them. Some teachers that belittle and embarrass these kids. Put your mask up. Don't put your mask down. The kids say, I need a break. You just had a break. Put your mask up. These students are too scared to ask for mask breaks. And then you have the teachers that don't even give mask breaks. What about the poor little kindergartners and first graders who don't even realize that they need fresh air? They don't know to ask. They don't need to say, I need a break. Mike, when I spoke with you on 9/7/11/04, you told me that these kids can have unlimited mask breaks through the day. Okay? Please meet with your teachers, meet with your staff, and make sure that they understand that these kids need mask breaks throughout the day. Please. And then there's gym class. That's a whole other story.
Can you wrap up, please?
I have one more thing, please.
Yes.
Please let me speak.
Sure.
Okay, no child should be wearing a mask while participating in gym, inside or outside. Please make this clear to your gym teachers because this is not happening. Okay, real quick, my COVID stories. My husband, myself, my 2 kids, we all had COVID in February. We're okay. God made us okay. My father-in-law, okay, who has had a liver transplant, is immunocompromised, got COVID from us, and very unfortunately, he was in the hospital. He is okay. My mother, this is a whole other story. She had a heart transplant.
I do have to ask you to wrap up, because I know we're not allowed to. I'm so
There's not
sorry.
that many people here, just give me a minute.
We-
My mother-in-law who had a heart transplant, she is immunocompromised, she's kidney dialysis 3 days a week. They told us that if she gets COVID, she will die, she will not make it. She got COVID last May. She's here today because of God. We are not in control, God is in control. I am not, and I will not live in fear. Why are everybody living in fear?
Thank you.
Well, I would just say this. We have reminded our phys ed teachers that kids are not to wear masks in gym. And if your child's teacher is not allowing the mask rates as you see fit, reach out to the teacher, reach out to the building principal.
That's your job, to make sure that the teachers
But
understand.
I don't know that it's happening. When you come to the podium and you say it's not happening, give me names and I will deal with it. But you as a parent need to take the responsibility to call your child's principal and say, your child's being denied a mask rate. Because as I sit here today, I'm telling you, they can have mask rates, and if you said 8 hours a day. No, I don't wear mine 8 hours a day. I do not. Because I take a break when I need to. As your child should be able to as well. And if we have a staff member who is denying that ability, go to your building principal so they can investigate it and they can deal with it. It's the simplest way to handle it. The buck stops with me and I get it. But go to your building principal. If they don't handle it, I will.
Come back to all the ceremony. Let you go.
My name is Tom Malego. I'm in Latrobe, PA. My son's a student at Latrobe here. I apologize if this is not the proper time to bring this up, but it is mask related, so I wanted to bring it up to the board. On Tuesday, September 7, 2021, students from the Greater Latrobe School District gathered outside for a protest against the mandatory mask policy. Most of the students involved entered the building at the beginning of the day and took care of incidental things before the school started. They exited the school and began the protest. The protesting students were addressed by Principal John Maines. Mr. John Maines reports to a higher level of administration, that being Dr. Tepper. Therefore, Dr. Tepper is directly responsible for Mr. Maines and his actions. During the protest, there were many students inside the school, taunting, belittling, and becoming verbally abusive towards the protesting students outside of the school, creating a hostile environment. The environment was quite visible to the students outside of the building. The hostile students inside the school in the corridor was not addressed by Mr. Maines. They were allowed to taunt the other students and have a hostile environment. They raged against the anti-mask mandate students, calling them names. A message was delivered that morning. The message was us against them. Us being the students outside protesting against the mask mandate, and Mr. Maines and the students inside. Mr. Maines was not making fun of them, but the other students were. His neglect to discipline those students was a sign to the students outside that he agreed with the students inside. A verbal message was delivered to the anti-mask mandate students. Put your mask on or get off the school property. Another message was delivered, put your mask on or get off the school property and enroll in cyber school. There was 3 times the students were addressed by Mr. Maines. The news, Channel 4, Channel 2 were definitely there. I watched them on their YouTube broadcasts. The students finally left the property by direction of Mr. Maines. Mr. Maines is not here today that I see.
He sure is, sir.
The other person right there. Mr. Maines, where would you be today?
Sir, please address the board.
Okay, I apologize. So my question is, to Mr. Maines, where would you be today if those children that left the school property by his direction were hurt or killed after they left the school? They were in the custody of the administration and faculty of the school. Okay?
Sir, can you go ahead and start to wrap up?
I will. I have a lot to say here. And I will say this. I'm a 56-year-old man who served my country in the United States Marine Corps. I'm also a taxpaying citizen that has been paying taxes here my entire life. I think that I deserve a little bit more time to explain the situation.
I'm trying to give it to you.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap up.
That's okay, I'm sorry, you go ahead.
The school board members, I would like to present to you that Dr. Tepper and Mr. Maines operated the school that day with gross negligence. Multiple cases of child endangerment. Those students were being part of the custody of the school and were not properly taken care of. I remind you that the titles of these two individuals are not honorary. They're professionals, and their salaries are being paid for by the taxpaying citizens of this community.
Thank you, sir.
We
We really do have to end.
I'm not done. I need to tell you a few more things.
No, sir, please.
We're done, sir. We're
Yeah,
done.
we're done, sir, please. We're gonna keep everybody in the same.
I want to say one more thing because this is very important. This is the key to the whole thing. At not one time were the students' parents called, contacted, or advised that their students were being taken off the property. This has never happened in this school district before. But when the principal tells the kids to get out off the property,
Thank you, sir.
they have to call the parents. They should have been brought into this auditorium, sat in safe spaces, and said, "Listen, you have to put your mask on, or enroll in cyber school. You have to leave the property. But we're going to call your parents and let them know.
No.
We're going to call your parents, and because the parents need to be notified. Why weren't the parents notified?
Please, sir, let,
May I please?
No, sir.
You may.
Okay. You might not be aware, but I was at the school that entire morning. Okay. Secondly, where I started, excuse me, I was in the commons area. And you were saying students came in and attended to their things and walked out. The majority of the 20-some students never came into the building. They sat outside at a table. There were 2 students that I know for sure didn't have a face covering, and I offered them one and they did not want one. And they sat in the office and then they walked out. So the fact that students came in and left really isn't accurate. Secondly, in the commons area where I stood, I observed our student body, and that day, students were told and directed by school counselors, teachers, and administrators to report directly to class. And I observed it myself. Also, the students were never told to go off school property. The students wanted to walk up to where the media was. And in fact, Mr. Maines looked at me, and the media was right at the top of the parking lot. And students walked to the media. Students were never told to leave school property. Students asked if they could come back in school without a mask, and we said, you cannot. We want you to take some time to think about it. We never once said you withdraw right now and you go to cyber school or ECAT Academy. There was never one confrontation. Furthermore, a majority of the students came back into school out of the 20 students that were out there with face coverings on. The students weren't the issue, sir. There were some parents that were issues, but the students weren't. They were peaceful, protesting, and we gave them that right.
The students outside were peaceful.
Parents were
protesting.
also called when students came into the building but still refused to wear a face covering. At that point in time, parents were called, and we told parents this was a Tuesday. Let your student think about it a couple of days. We do not want your student to withdraw. We want your student here. We don't know how long this order will be in effect. We gave them until Friday to consider what they wanted to do because we did not want students just to withdraw from school, go to E Academy, and have to stay at E Academy for a 9-week period. As far as Mr. Maines, I literally was with Mr. Maines the majority of that morning. And there was never once we would have ever told students to leave school property, ever. Students that left school property, if we did not know they left, there's no way to contact the parent.
Sir, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Please.
I will agree with you that the students went to the media to talk to them, and they came back to the building. My son was one of them, that's how I know this. And I talked to 3 other kids that were involved in that, and they were asked to leave the school property. You should have never let those kids leave the school
That's
property.
not
without
accurate.
those-
It's not accurate.
That is accurate. Are you
Okay,
calling my son a
Sir,
liar?
no.
Because we can bring students in at the next
Sir,
meeting.
Please stand aside and let the next
We can
meeting
bring,
go, sir.
you're
Please.
covering for yourself, and that's how it's always going to be. You're wrong, what happened was wrong, and you won't take responsibility.
I take
No,
responsibility.
you're not, no,
for
you're
my
not.
Sir, please step
I will
back.
bring students to the next school board meeting.
Anyone else?
Hi, Cindy Yotzi. I have 2 kids in the district. I've talked to you many times. I don't believe in this. As far as what happened that day, I also know that students came in and were not allowed to leave for the protest.
That's
We didn't care the same thing. We didn't care how many kids went out and protested. I saw that on social media. That is 100%.
You locked the doors.
We
No,
had,
no, sir,
you don't
I
lock the doors from the inside out.
You can't lock the
You
doors.
can't lock them from the inside out.
Also, just addressing the academy thing, those are not our district teachers, correct? That's not the same education.
Ma'am, start again and just make your statement. We're not going to argue back.
I'm not trying to argue with
No,
anyone.
I know you're not. You're absolutely not. Go ahead and
I
take your
really
time.
don't.
Go ahead.
Okay? I have 2 students. I'm going to ask a question. Because both of my students, one has an IEP, one has a 504 plan. Both for anxiety and one for autism with anxiety. So why do they have to go to this?
Did your physician send an exemption?
You have that information.
No, excuse me. We have received medical exemptions that have gone to Ms. Haristo-Belovish and have been reviewed, and they have been granted if it's from a medical provider. We did not go through every single IEP or every health record of a student that has asthma, because what we have found is that doctors contacted us and flat out said to us, they will only write an exemption if it is absolutely necessary.
And if I
So therefore, we are not granting an exception just because a student has asthma or has a 504 agreement or an IEP. However, if the request comes to Mrs. Belovish and it's a valid, and I mean valid, medical excuse, because we had forms that were copied when we called physicians that they didn't write. We had things downloaded from the internet. If it is a legitimate excuse, we have granted mass exceptions.
Okay, so your school district, okay, has granted my have dictated that my kids have autism and anxiety, which you've had on file with the district since they were little.
And your 504 says nothing about masks.
Well then, I guess I need to re-up my 504.
And talk to Ms. Everett.
Because I think this is ridiculous.
And I understand.
Let's be honest, okay? This isn't preventing anything. You still have kids out sick, which we always do. You still have kids that maybe one of them got sick because they're wearing this on a regular basis. You have now kids that have anxiety out the wazoo because their face is covered 98% of their day. And this isn't getting us anywhere. You're still quarantining people. You're still doing everything that you were doing before. What purpose is this? And as far as Mr. Solicitor, you know how it was hard for you to read with your glasses on and so on and so forth? That's what it's like for a kid to learn education with a mask. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Maines, what time do you lock the doors in the morning when all the kids come in?
Our school resource officers lock and custodian Craig probably about 8:20.
8:20.
8:20.
I did lock the doors that morning at 9 o'clock. And the reason that I locked those doors at 9 o'clock in the morning was for the same reason that they're locked every day. To protect the 1,300 students that are inside. Any student that wanted to walk out at 8:30 had every opportunity that they wanted to. They had a half an hour pass to do that. But locking those doors was not meant to keep kids inside because they can push out anytime they want to. But when I have parents in the parking lot telling me that they are going to walk into my building, walk in and take their kids from class to class, I have a duty to protect the 1,300 kids that are inside.
Nobody said that.
They absolutely did.
I was there, nobody said that.
You weren't in the conversation that I had, ma'am. And I appreciate that you think you know the conversation that I had, but I did. Was it from a majority? It was not. I talked to lots of folks that day who were absolutely 100% appropriate, but I talked to a few that weren't. So I have a
You were
duty.
very peaceful.
For the most part, yes ma'am, you are correct. But when I have parents telling me that they are going to walk into that building, it's just not going to happen because I have 1,300 kids in that building. Mr. Vallejo, as far as kids being unsupervised when they were off property, we had 2 school resource officers posted at the end of the property while those kids were out there to watch them at all times.
Why were the kids told to leave?
Sir,
They
go ahead.
weren't told to
Go ahead, sir.
leave. They chose to do that.
Okay,
If
go
you
ahead,
have
sir. You're
resource
right.
officers, why did you have to lock the door?
Right.
You have law enforcement there, they could have taken care of it.
We lock the doors every day. It's our procedure, sir.
Go ahead, sir, please.
Hi, so my name is Tim Felberg. I am a pastor in the area and I also work in the mental health field. I have 3 children in the Greater Latrobe School District, 1 here at the high school and 2 at Mountain View Elementary. Superintendent Tepper, we've talked through email.
Yes.
And I am concerned for their mental health, but I also recognize that we're not going to solve anything standing here yelling back and forth to each other. I appreciate the sentiments being said. I agree with a lot of what's being said, but my heart is this. Is there any latitude that allows you as a school district to partner with places in the community? I have a church that sits partially empty throughout the course of the week, and I know that might be a very long shot, but if there would be any way to be able to try to partner, I want to partner with the schools in the area. I have a history of doing that in our church, and I am more than happy to be able to try to accommodate and do that. If there would be any way to do that and allow students that don't want to be in masks, whatever it might be. I don't have all the answers, but I have a creative personality and a creative mind, and I'm willing to try. And so I would just like to know if that's even permitted, or if there's any latitude for that. Because again, I am concerned for their mental health. I am concerned for what this is doing to even my kids and the struggle that they're having. And so I would just like to know if maybe that's something that could be answered at this time, and if not, I'm happy to talk about that at another time, whenever it's most appropriate. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And we will have, I will speak with Mr. Briscoe as well as
Hi, Monica Green. Both Dr. Tepper and Mr. Veronica know me very well. I've also spoken to Ned. So, a couple statements. Both of the statutes that you mentioned deal with sick people, quarantining sick people. So both of the statutes that are addressed with the health order deal strictly with quarantining sick people. Not all of our children that are in the school are sick. Why are we masking all of them? Secondly, can we please get Dr. Zorch to pay attention and be respectful of the audience when we're speaking? Not throw around his chair. It's been now 2 meetings where we don't get the same respect.
And I disagree with every word you say. And I'm not.
That doesn't mean you can't show respect.
I respect everybody's opinion.
You're not showing it.
Please, let the speaker go on. Go on.
Which I addressed with you, Mr. Nagel.
Thank you.
Also, as a solicitor for the school district, your personal opinion needs to be separate from what you're addressing with the school. Because you and I have talked many times, and I know you believe in masks. So I believe that you're putting your personal opinion into what you're advising to the school board. I'm a Crohn's patient. I've been a Crohn's patient for 17 years. You know what my doctor recommends? Throw this thing in the garbage. Because the only real, fight is my immune system, which is already compromised. And I need to be, affected by the virus. I need to be exposed to it, or I'm never going to be safe. I need to be exposed to every virus. We're seeing an influx of RSV. You know why? Because our kids were in these all of last year. Get our kids out of the masks and keep them out of the masks.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark Leschnitz, and I live at 2249 Raymond Avenue. It's River. Yeah.
What's your last name?
Leschnitz.
Oh, I remember.
I had something written down, but I'm just going to wing it. I think that's the best way to do it. You guys said about mask breaks and mask exceptions. What about a mask elimination?
I think you heard the order.
I did. I was paying attention to all of you. And
We're following the order. That's where we are.
I understand that, but can I just make it out whatever
I
I
didn't
got?
say it's a law, it's an order.
Go ahead, sir.
All right, thank you. I was going to start the night off like this. Good evening, school board members and parents. My name is Mark Leschnitz. Some of you may know who I am, and some of you may not know me at all. Either way, I'm sure most of you will forget my name or butcher it. Don't worry though, because I'm used to being forgotten and having my name mispronounced. What I don't want you to forget is the real reason why I'm in attendance tonight. That reason is the students, kids. I'm here tonight not to be nice, polite, or worry about your feelings. I'm here to make a statement and take a stand for children and their parents. The mask mandates and separation of the vaccinated and unvaccinated needs to end. It needs to end now. I'm not a scientist, doctor, nurse, part of any official organizations, or a government employee, just a human being speaking from my gut and my heart. I have 3 children, a 14-year-old stepson, a 3-year-old boy, and I have a 1-month-old baby girl. My 2 boys go to dairy, but that's irrelevant to is why I'm here. Cradle to Trobe is my own water since I never went to college or any school past 12th grade. I've been a part of the school and community my whole life up to this point. I've always had a run in school, from elementary to high school. School is supposed to be a fun, motivational, and educational experience. A place where kids can relax and focus on learning and not worry about the outside world. It makes it very hard to do that with the ridiculous nonsense that is going on. Students should be creating special bonds with their teachers, making friends, playing, laughing, and most importantly, learning. Learning positive, good, useful things for preparation of the world. The only thing they're learning at the moment is how to conform, let others, adults, control them in every aspect of life. They're being fed wrongful and invalid information by the media and word of mouth, more now than ever before. Don't sit up there as a school board member and tell me how to protect my kids. Don't sit up there as a parent, which most of you probably are, and tell me how to raise my children. You don't have a damn clue. No matter what your decision will be, I'm here to fight for my school and all the children that are inside these walls and all over the community. I will stop at nothing to make sure they're protected and can go back to learning the way they were intended to ask. If you are a parent here tonight to defend masks and support mandates, I hold no call to you. That is your belief, and if that's what you want for your kids to wear masks, then that's part of your rights and your business. But please, please let us parents who want our children to be mask-free or return to normal learning have a say in this, because you're not hurting the school board or the parents, you're hurting the children. And I would just like to say, Mr. Prenka, you were my track coach. You were also my teacher. Dr. Tebber, you were my principal. John Maines, his brother, is married to my cousin, so I consider him family, and whatever he did or didn't do during the protest, that's on him. I'd just like to conclude that I didn't want to make this political tonight, but we got to. We have a president right now who's not doing his job at all. And the reason for that is because this has never been about children, safety, any of the other things. It's always been about money, power, and control. If you, as a school board and a district, lost your insurances or any of the other stuff, why can't you still go on protecting our kids and teaching them? You can't put money on a child's life or education. Sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Justin Corner, and I feel that I'm being discriminated at the school for not wearing a mask. I feel that when I go around the halls and I see all these kids, even some staff, not wearing masks, and I get called down to the office and my mom gets a call saying she has to pick me up. I don't think that's right. You guys think that's right?
I'm not sure what you're saying. I apologize.
I'm saying that I'm being kicked out while there is staff and students with their masks on their chin, wearing mesh masks, not wearing some at all, some of them, and yet I'm getting picked out of the group. I've been getting picked out for the last 3 weeks, and it's a coin flip if I make it or not. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't make it through the school day. So do you think that's right, that these staff aren't getting kicked out with me, and these students aren't getting kicked out with me?
I would say that we do have some staff members with medical exemptions that you may not be privy to, the same way we have some students with medical exemptions.
I know for a fact there are some students without medical exemptions that are getting by, and
if that is the case, then that needs to be reported for the administration to hear.
okay, but, so, am I just going to keep getting kicked out then?
We're following an order, and I think we were clear that we really tried to work, and we want our students here. But we're following the order, and if you're going to downright refuse to wear a face covering and you don't have an exemption, we will offer you instruction to wear a media cap.
You have enforced that order very well. I think everybody has, from teachers to principals to counselors, everybody's enforced that very well. But it's my choice whether I have to wear it when I don't, and I choose not to. It's strongly recommended.
And all your students, a lot of them have to
We have a speaker out here, go ahead.
She can speak if she wants.
No, get speak. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Okay, but yeah, I think it's not right that I'm being forced to wear a mask and get deprived of my education because I don't want to wear one. And I'm getting offered ECATs, but I can't do ECATs because it's distracting. It just doesn't work for my family anymore. And I have to be in person. That's the best way to learn. If you don't realize how boring a classroom is till you're in one, you know? And it helps to be there in person. So I just don't like the mask. I choose not to wear one, and I get discriminated and deprived of education for that. And I don't think that's right. And I'm asking you guys if you do. Do you think that's okay? No response? All right, that's all I got to say then.
Thank you, sir.
Seeing no one else.
My name is Jamie River. My son is in first grade. Every single one of you, very short time. Every single one of you sitting up there have a moral obligation. You're to be advocates for our children. It is immoral to give a generic medical intervention to every single child without a medical exam or a risk assessment. It's illegal and it's wrong. If you believe a mask is protecting you, then by all means wear one. Nobody's judging you. We as parents have the right to make a decision for our children whether or not a mask is the best choice, the safest choice. Those of you manipulated by the media, those of you blinded to see the big picture here, those of you living in fear, to each their own. But you will not hold your fear against us. Your fear will not take my rights away as a parent. Your fear will not force my child to wear a mask. A mask that poses so many risks, mentally, emotionally, severe health risks. A mask that exacerbates existing health conditions. Health conditions that you do not have the right to know. They do not have to be disclosed to you because of HIPAA, a federal law. Questioning science is not wrong. It's not disrespectful or stupid. It is the intelligent, mature, and moral thing to do. Science works by questioning and finding and researching and observing. Yes, sometimes science is wrong and has to be changed based on the evidence. We're a year and a half into this. The science we once believed to be true has evolved over time through studies and research. You as a solicitor are being paid to be here to fight for our children. And instead of doing what is right, you're letting these school board members fear that they can be held accountable personally. They can't. And I understand some of you are being forced and threatened by the Department of Education. They send letters, they're threatening you to lose your certificates. That's not true either. There's a very specific list of reasons that one can lose their certificate. Failing to follow an order by the Department of Health is not one of them. A mandate, a recommendation that's not a law, them not if school chooses not to follow that recommendation, that mandate, that is not willful misconduct. That is having a moral, doing the right moral thing. The PA law states that the Department of Health can only order mandates for infected people. All of the children being forced to wear masks are not infected. They can't force kids who are not infected, who are not sick. So again, instead of instilling fear in these school board members, you should be helping them have the confidence, letting them know that they cannot be held accountable personally. They cannot be sued. Dr. Zorch, I'm going to pause what I'm saying for a minute. You know, we were asked to show you respect at the first meeting that we spoke at.
Your eyes.
Your unprofessional, childish behavior, sitting up there with your arms crossed, not even giving attention to even the two students that spoke at the first meeting. I'm embarrassed for you, and any parent that had respect for you probably has none. You aren't in the ER anymore calling the shots. You're sitting up here on our school board as a member of our school board. Shame on you. Shame on you, you are unprofessional.
Since I've been challenged a couple times here, I'm going to say something.
Because of your unprofessional behavior.
I have worked as a professional for many years. My brother's still working in the emergency department. They are overwhelmed. There are people in ventilators, there are people dying. This is not a made-up disease that affects people.
Nobody said
Somebody talked about morals and brought up God. I am a Christian. And Jesus and Matthew said, what you do for the least of them, you do for me. And if we can protect the least from getting sick from a terrible disease and causing illness, severe illness or death, then that is the moral lesson. You folks are missing that.
No. Some of us work in the medical field and know the truth too.
I know the truth, and I've spoken to it, and I will not be challenged and told I'm disrespectful because I've heard every word
You are disrespectful. You're acting in a disrespectful, unprofessional manner.
Thank you very kindly. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm not quite done.
Please, yeah, your time is up.
Let her speak.
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, ma'am, please. No, ma'am, please.
Can I please just say one more thing?
Sure, you can conclude, sure. Go ahead.
So each and every one of you cannot be held accountable personally, but what you can be held accountable for is denying children's rights. That is what you should be fearing, not the liability of your decisions. What was the point of putting this ventilation system and this filtration system in every school? We spent all this money for what? Wasn't that part of your COVID plan, or whatever the technical term is? Yet our children still are being forced to wear masks. You're choosing to follow this mandate. A lot of it has to do with money. A lot of it has to do with politics. You're getting a ton of money. It's public knowledge what you got last year for every student in this school because of COVID.
Ma'am, I do have to ask you, please, way over your time, please.
She's taking my time.
No, we don't exchange time.
Okay, well, you can choose to follow this mandate, but you can't pick and choose what parts of this mandate you can follow. It states in black and white that
Thank you,
children
ma'am.
can have exemptions and it does not need a physician's signature.
Thank you, ma'am.
Heather Navarre, I have 2 children who go to the school. This is truly a thankless job, isn't it? It's thankless. I have a suggestion. I think every one of you should have, everyone that's on the school board needs to have a child in the school and have to go through all of the things that they go through.
I have 2 grandchildren.
Please don't leave us.
She has a daughter.
Yes.
He has grandchildren. We're in the same boat.
Well, I don't know why you took the job, and it's not for me to say, but I can say that I know a lot of you.
I can tell you why you do the job. We're looking out for 3,700 kids, and you.
Yeah,
Okay. And we gotta stay within the limits of what we can do.
But how do you
That's
know?
why we're here.
How do you know a child isn't going to pass out and die from carbon dioxide poisoning? Are you going to be responsible for that as well?
You don't think we don't sleep every night because of that? You don't think we sit up here every night and we agonize just as you all do? I haven't had a good sleep in the last 19 months.
Do the right thing.
Dr. Zorch, I was in the ER with my infant son. I remember talking to you, and he had colic, and you were talking about paregoric and how we, that, I don't know why you do it. I don't know, maybe it's to stay relevant. I'm not sure. Dr. McLaughlin, please don't leave. You're a voice of reason for us. I beg you not to leave. And Mr. McCommons, I voted for you. Mr. McCommons, I voted for you. Your wife is wonderful. She's a peach. And my kids went to her preschool. But I can tell you it is not fair that you do not have to wear masks. How do we propose to know the 3,000 people, the kids in the school. Don't you think they might have a little bit of a problem breathing too? My mother has one mom. She routinely wears a mask, and it is hypocritical. I voted for you, and I won't make the same mistake.
All right, thank you very much for all your
Go ahead, I'm sorry. One more minute. Take your time.
Person Paul, the township resident. I just want to really think about, I know hands are tied here. Luckily, he made the right decision according to the majority of the community, the petition, what petition, it said last time about going mask optional. So we were very pleased last, understand the lunch has been, thrown and everything. But we do have options, and there are a couple of school districts and some representatives that are suing the state over this. And one of the school districts here in Westmoreland County, I heard yesterday, Enfield area is really considering jumping in on this fight. So I want you to really think about doing this. These things, these masks are they're not consistent. In my background's in psychology, so there's too many variables. We're not all, the kids aren't all here in N95s, or, everybody's wearing different types of masks. So really, we can look at studies on both sides and say, we've got 34 peer-reviewed studies that say masks work, and over here we've got 30 that say they don't work, and we can go back and forth, and we really don't know, what the conclusion of this is. It's a little unethical at this point to put, during time pandemic, to put some people in masks and not study that. I did find in a journal of Pakistan in 2012, there were some Saudi Arabian women that were putting face veils and not face veils, and they did find some issues with the women that did have to wear the veils all the time. It was that was a ventilation problem they were having. So there have been studies done in the past. Of course, this is evolving science, we just don't know. But I would really like you to think long and hard about, moving forward. We're living under some tyrannical times here with a governor that is really taking a lot of constitutional rights away from people. So, please think on that. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Billy.
moving on. I move for adoption of resolution number 51.
Can I ask one question?
You had your time, I'm sorry.
I have a valid
I
question.
move for
on this.
adoption of resolution
If you
number
launch an investigation of that situation, now I'm asking the board, because we've heard two people from the school, but we haven't heard from the rest of the board.
If you wonder why I'm not paying attention to you, it's because you're not at the podium, and that podium's closed right now.
Why can't you launch an investigation?
If somebody could.
Hearing a visitor's part two. You come back here, you bring visitors part two.
I move for adoption of resolution number 51, approval of the minutes.
Second.
A motion on the floor and second. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Education planning, Mrs. Main.
Thank you. I move for adoption of resolution number 52 to approve the updated Greater Latrobe School District's ARP ESSER Health and Safety Plan for the 21-22 school year and authorize administration to submit the plan to the Pennsylvania Department of Education and post publicly on the district website as required.
We have a motion on the floor, second. Any questions or comments on the motion?
I have a comment, Mr. President. So when all this started to come down, 18, 19 months ago, whatever this happened, we were one of the few schools in the district, and the state, I think, that was able to adapt and modify our educational program. I don't know enough of the technical terms, but I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ferenta, just to drag you down our path over what happened in the last 19 months and keeping the schools open and keeping the butts in the seats the entire time and still maintaining the quarantine protocols. Mr. Ferenta?
From the moment the shutdown occurred, we pivoted on down and go online. Period. Putting Chromebooks in the hands of every student that we needed to, serving lunches at our schools, so the folks had food. That got us through the year. Being able to graduate in a stadium, in a stadium where we were one of the only schools to not have a drive-through graduation for our students because Dr. Tebber wanted to have some type of normalcy. To this year.
Go back.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. We opened up 5 days a week for elementary students, and we started for 2 weeks with a hybrid schedule for secondary. After 2 weeks, we went to full-time, brick and mortar, choice or online. We were forced to close down like everybody else was prior to Christmas. We were the first school district in the county to reopen.
Nobody's denying that you did it.
Can I finish?
This is not open floor.
And you know what? It is our job. And you're absolutely right, it's our job. But never once did any of these administrators have a day or night off. Go back to March 13th when we shut down and it was a stay-at-home order. We never stayed at home. You know why? Because we made certain our kids were taken care of. There were other administrators in other districts, didn't even go in through January of the following year. And to sit here and to tell us that we don't look out for our students, and I have a daughter in this district too. Does she want to wear a mask? No. But guess what? As a parent, not a superintendent, it's my obligation to let her know that we are in a situation right now that we hope to get through as quickly as possible, and we need to do at this time what we need to do. We'll go back to the opening of this year, 5 days a week, everybody, brick and mortar. Took away GLSD online because of the number of kids who didn't succeed with it, but still offer the ECAT Academy for kids online. To think for 19 months, prior to 19 months, when they talked about the pandemic in January, we were already planning. We were planning, and that's why when the governor came out at 3 o'clock and we came out at 2 o'clock, and we were going to have 2 activity days for our teacher staff professional development to prepare for online learning, we beat him. And then he came out and he closed the schools down. We were at my house at 11 o'clock at night calling parents who didn't have internet and delivering Wi-Fi.
Are you voting or are you
representing
us?
We've had enough.
Let's go.
You said you were voting, but you're reprimanding us.
No.
I'm explaining
Knock it off.
when we hear that we have not had, this entire board has not had the best interest of students. You need to look back to March 13th, 2020 and compare us with any other district in this state.
Thank you, Dr. Tupper.
Any other comments? Roll call vote. Mrs. Borkowski, please.
Mr. Music. Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mrs. Surratt.
Yes.
Dr. Zorch.
Yes.
Mrs. Kozer.
Yes.
Dr. Laughlin.
Yes.
Mrs. Mays.
Yes.
Mr. McCommons.
Yes.
And Mr. Hauser.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas, 0 nays.
That motion passes.
I also move for adoption of resolution number 53 to approve the MOU between the Greater Latrobe Education Association and the Greater Latrobe School District for the 21-22 school year.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor and second. Questions or comments on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
As I do quite often, I'd like to bundle resolutions number 54 through 60. We went over what these were last week, and they are all agreements agreements that we make with outside organizations to come in and help our students at certain times through the year. So I will move for adoption of resolutions number 54 through 60. Second.
We have a motion on the floor and second. Questions or comments on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
The next curriculum committee meeting is to be determined. The curriculum committee met this evening at 5:30. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. May. Finance. I move for adoption of resolution number 61. Approve the treasurer's report.
Second.
Motion on the floor, second. Questions or comments on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. I move for adoption of resolution number 62. Approve payment of bills.
Second.
A motion on the floor, second. Questions or comments on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes. Our next finance committee meeting will be Tuesday, October 12th, 5:30 p.m. at the Senior High School Library. Facilities Operation and Planning, Mr. Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask the board to move on number 63, award quotes and bids for capital improvement, 2021 capital improvements projects, see the attachment.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor and second. Questions or comments on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes.
Our next facilities and operations and planning committee meeting will be held Thursday, October 7th at 3:30 at the administration building. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Student Activities and Recreation, Mr. Music.
Thank you. Number 4 this evening, next athletic and recreation committee meeting is to be determined. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Music. Mrs. Surratt, Community Relations, please.
The next Greater Latrobe Park and Recreation Commission meeting will be Thursday, October the 21st at 4:30 at the Latrobe Municipal Building. That's all we have tonight, sir.
Thank you, Mrs. Surratt. Westmoreland Intermediate Unit, Mrs. Baines.
Thank you. Again, no report tonight, but the next WIU committee meeting will be held next Tuesday, September the 28th at 7 p.m. in the WIU board meeting room. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Baines. EWCTC, Joint Operating Committee, Mrs. Tozo.
Thank you, Mr. Hauser. The next EWCTC Joint Operating Committee meeting will be tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. at EWCTC. Thank you. That's my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Tozo. Our Transportation Committee, Mr. Music.
Thank you. Number 4 this evening, and the next presentation committee is to be determined. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Music. Board Policy, PSBA Liaison, Mrs. Surratt.
Thank you, Mr. Hauser. We need to, as a local board, vote on the election of the PSBA officers as we discussed last week. The only place where we really have to make a decision on this is the president-elect position. We'll choose one seat out of 2 options. As was explained to me, historically, the PSBA liaison will often make a recommendation, and so I can ask you all to take a look if you had a chance at the 2 options online. By a thin margin, I'm leaning toward David Scott of Brentwood Borough School District, mostly because of his extended years of service to his local school board and also to the boards of his intermediate unit and his technical school. Additionally, he's worked with the PSBA working currently with the PSBA in their offices. I'm saying by an outside lash, I'm leaning toward David Scott, but simply because she has less years and less service to her local community. So if any of the board members have an opinion, I guess now would be the time for us to discuss that.
I agree, I thought he was a better choice. Me too.
I'm sorry, Dr. Walker, I couldn't hear you.
I agree, and I thought he was the better choice.
So if no one else has an opinion, we render our vote for David Scott for president-elect position. The vice president position only had one candidate, and the insurance trustee positions, there are 3 positions available and 3 candidates, so no hard decisions there. Officially, Jody asked that we would also approve her recommendations. In the paperwork, it said that the board secretaries form steering committee members are chosen by our board secretaries. And Mrs. Borowski's recommendation to the board would be for Jennifer Davidson, Ann Ziegler, and Jamie Lynn Ziermowski. She has some experience being involved with them over the years of her service, and I'm inclined to think she's the right voice to hear. So if y'all are okay with that, that would be my recommendation to the board.
Sounds great.
Okay, so then I'll move to approve resolution number 64, the election of PSBA officers as we discussed.
Second.
A motion on the floor and second. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
Thank you, and I'd also like to move that we approve board policy number 65 for the new policies that we've now discussed. This is our 3rd time covering the policies as listed.
Second.
A motion on the floor and second. Questions or comments on the motion?
Just one comment. When we're reviewing the board policies, just as the district social media, is that an ongoing review every year that we're looking at that portion? Because the way it's changing so fast.
No, our recommendations come from PSBA, and when they have a legal decision that comes down that they think impacts our policy, they reach out to us and make suggestions, and then we review them as a committee and decide whether to accept.
I knew that part,
or
but
change.
is the social media thing a yearly thing that they look at, or is it just only when we're ruling? I think that's what you said.
I think it's when a ruling comes. I don't think they all, it goes with everything else. It's not necessarily reviewed on an annual basis. It's when different laws change or court cases occur.
Well, we read a lot of them, that's why it was.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I've been in this board thing for a while. This is at least the 3rd time social media.
I would agree. Yeah.
At least 3 times.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
And before we bring these to you as a board, we sit down as a committee, the administration and myself and the
Sure.
council, and we compare our old policy to what the PSBA is recommending, and then we tweak it as we feel is appropriate for our school board, and that's what we see, I mean, for our district, and that's what we see as your action.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a motion on the floor and second. Any other questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes.
And next board policy committee meeting has yet to be determined, that will be at the administration building. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mrs. Surratt. Technology, Mr. Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nothing to report this evening. However, our next technology committee meeting will be Tuesday, October 19th, 5:30, here at the CSE. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Superintendent's recommendations, Dr. Pepper.
Thank you, Mr. Hauser. I ask the board to please move on resolution number 66 to approve the following resignations: Rachel Kolar, classroom assistant; Claudia Lesko, personal care assistant; and Pete Howe, custodian. And I would like to thank all of these individuals for their service to the Greater Latrobe School District and wish them the best on their future endeavors.
So moved.
A motion on the floor and second. Questions or comments on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? That motion passes.
I ask the board to please move on resolution number 67 to I'd ask the board to please move on resolution number 68 to approve professional personnel, substitute teachers, which also includes a registered nurse.
A motion on the floor and second. Questions or comments on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
I'd ask the board to please move on resolution number 69 to approve support personnel supplemental positions where we have assistant weight training supervisor Rachel Fry and a volunteer junior high football coach Taylor Dominic.
A motion on the floor and second. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
I'd ask the board to please move on resolution number 70, which is the ratification, and I will read this, of agreement for SEIU Local 32BJ. This is a roll call vote that the Board of School Directors of the Greater Latrobe School District hereby formally ratifies the agreement between the Service Employees International Union 32BJ covering custodial and food service employees and the Greater Latrobe School District covering the period July 1, 2021 to and including June 30th, 2024.
We have a motion on the floor and a second. Questions or comments? Would you please vote? Rule, Mrs. Bronowski.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mrs. Surratt.
Yes.
Dr. Thorpe.
Yes.
Mrs. Kozer.
Yes.
Dr. Laughlin.
Yes.
Mrs. Maines.
Yes.
Mr. McCommon. Mr. Music. Mr. Hazard.
Yes.
Passes. 8-0.
That motion passes.
Thank you. I'd ask the board to please move on resolution number 71 to approve classified personnel hourly rate of pay effective July 1st, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor and second. Questions or comments on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes.
I'd ask the board to please move on resolution number 72 to approve assistant athletic directors and employee benefit and pay plans effective July 1st, 2021.
Second.
A motion on the floor and second. Questions or comments on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes.
Under other business, we have some events coming up. Our football game Friday evening, October 8th, is also our junior high band night, which will be held at Memorial Stadium at 6 p.m. Our homecoming game is Friday, October 15th at Memorial Stadium, and we are in the process of planning an outdoor homecoming dance, if at all possible, Saturday, October 16th. And we will have a fall class play October 22nd and October 3rd, Radiant Girls by D.W. Gregory. Our future board meetings are Tuesday, October 12th, committee of the whole at 7:30, and followed the following week by our regular board meeting, October 19th, 7:30 p.m.
Thank you, Dr. Kevin. At this time, I'd like to open the floor up to hearing of visitors part 2. This is where anyone in the audience can come forward and speak of any concerns they have with the school district. State your name, address, and we're limiting you to 3 minutes.
My name is Paul Malego, 181 Beach Road, Latrobe, PA. I'm not going to debate what I've talked about before. I guess this isn't the time for doing that. Mike, you and I have about 11-year history. My son thinks the world of you. I was a little jealous when he came home and said he wanted to be a principal because you were his principal. Okay? Dr. Dufford, I really don't know you. I'm going to address the rest of the board members. I think it's within your duty to launch an investigation for what happened that day. Mike, I don't know that if you were standing beside the principal of the school the whole time, for every moment that this was going on, but I have talked to several students and a parent that disagreed with what you said. Please do not think I'm calling you a liar. I'm just saying you may not have been at every single point at every single time and heard every single thing that was said. My son tells me the truth. I'm not even saying anything else, but I'm sorry, I'm going back to debate now. My whole point is, as a school board, I think it's your duty to launch an investigation, independent, and interview the students and the parents that were there, and make sure that they know that there's not going to be anything that comes against them for telling the truth. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Sonia Miller. I hadn't intention of speaking tonight, but I don't have childcare, so I had to bring my little one with me, and I'm standing up here because she asked me to. I'm going into my 11th month of antibiotic treatment for an infection that I got from wearing a mask. After 10 months of antibiotics, I was able to take it off, but then I went to the airport and had to wear one, and the infection came back. I'm not looking to debate the efficacy of masks. I don't think we need to. I think you all already know that they aren't as effective as we would like them to be. It says right on the box that it does not stop the spread of COVID or other infectious diseases. Our children aren't wearing an N95 masks. Clearly, the governor realizes that they are not very effective. If he was concerned about the standard, he wouldn't recommend that we make them from household items. I don't think your hands are tied. I don't envy you. I don't. I think that you have chosen a job in a position that more often than not is thankless. I imagine that you never feel fully appreciated. There is never a time when you guys are without judgment. I don't know why you chose this path, but you did. I'm new at this. My little one isn't even 11 years old yet. The only experience I have is in Latrobe Elementary School. And I have to tell you, I have been thankful for the most part. This is the first time I have ever had doubt. I don't think your hands are tied. I think that you can do more. I realize that you never have a moment where you don't feel that you have to defend yourselves. And I'm sorry for that. That has to be exhausting. I'm not asking you to throw out the governor's request, although I think you should. I believe that you can be more compassionate and you can be more flexible. It states that you don't have to have medical evidence for an exemption to be approved. I would think that perhaps, for the sake of the well-being of some of these children and some of these parents, you should look at granting exemptions. We're arguing about masks as though they're protecting our children. I've heard people speak as though they feel they have to enforce the mask mandate to keep our children safe. But I don't think that we're really looking at the matter, the real matter here. Our children have rights, and we as parents have rights, and those rights are worth fighting for. I'm not asking you to debate whether or not, or prove whether or not they should be wearing masks. That's already been proven. I'm asking you to fight for their individual rights. I'm I'm asking you to look at the variables. There is a way that you can do this. You're brilliant people. You can come up with a plan that works. And I'm asking you to step outside of where you are right now and come together and try to find that solution.
Thank you.
That you didn't think I was going to stand up again. I'm going to move on from masks just because I think you guys are taking that way too lightly. What I am going to move on to is Mr. Maples, your solicitor, so you have some sort of law degree, I assume, lawyer, right?
I'm sorry.
You're a solicitor for this fine committee, and you have a law degree? You're a lawyer?
Yes.
Since we're going to bring up the Constitution, can you tell me anywhere in the Constitution where it says we have to listen to the Department of Health, the WHO, or the CDC?
Yeah.
Because I can't find it.
Let me get it for you.
Oh, you actually have a copy of it?
No, it's a court case.
No, do you have a copy of the Constitution?
No.
You don't have a copy of the Constitution? You can print it out on the internet.
Yeah.
You know, why do you guys don't have it? If you're going to bring
Would
it up.
you like to hear the court case? There's
Please.
there's a Supreme Court case that both gives governments, school districts, the power to do things for the health and safety of individuals. In fact, there's a case, County of Butler versus Wolf, last year, you all remember it. There was a local judge, Judge Stickman, who's appeared in front of a number of times in federal court, and he specifically held, even though he ruled against the government, he specifically held that the Supreme Court precedents give the state and local officials broad powers in the field of health and safety of individuals. So there clearly is a constitutional precedent for it. There's Supreme Court precedent that allows states and the United States to require vaccinations. That's why you all have polio vaccinations. So this isn't anything new, and it's clearly allowed in the Constitution. Wait, you asked me a question, let me answer. Now, the question that's going to be discussed in court, in the Commonwealth Court that I told you, there will be a constitutional question as to whether the state constitution would allow for some new mask mandate, or is this the governor trying to do an end round and avoid the new constitutional amendment? That's an issue I'm very interested in, and I'm very interested in seeing the outcome of that. The reason that I do not believe we should be joining lawsuits is because they are already in place. They are already teed up with good lawyers. I'm not going to spend my district's money on it. But it's going to the Commonwealth Court, which will be a statewide decision for us to look at. And when that outcome comes down, I'll review it, and I'll review it with my board. So I'm not, you know what, I wasn't real bright in high school, and I didn't do real well on the LSATs in college, but I worked my tail off every step of the way. And I do know constitutional law. And right now, what we're doing is comporting with an order that is currently being appealed, and we're going to keep an eye on what happens. And that's the responsible thing to do. Now, you start again. I took up all your time, so you go ahead now.
I understand what you're saying, but what you guys are doing and what the officials are trying to do are two different things. They're trying to bend the Constitution. They're trying to tear it just a little bit so they can insert their own agendas. You know where I'm coming from?
Thank you.
Dr. Schwartz, I think part of your problem with not paying attention is you're a tall guy, so you probably need a tall chair with a Also, the layout of this meeting isn't the best. I think you guys should be looking up to us, or at least make a level eye contact. How do I know that kids aren't sitting up there looking at the back wall while I'm talking?
Ordinarily, I don't know if you've been to other meetings, but
That's my first
ordinarily, we look face to face. This is only because we had a bigger crowd tonight and we can see in the other room. Nobody thinks they're any better than anyone or looking down on you.
Center for Student Creativity, I know that room. I was attending the school when it was built.
Okay.
And Mr. Branco, I was on your track. You also had me I also had you as a teacher.
8th grade?
Yeah, 8th grade. I think it was either social studies or science.
It was civics.
Civics, yeah.
You ran the 100 meter.
Did. Yeah. One of the things you taught me as a teacher was that I never give up and that I have a lot of potential. And that's what we all see in our kids. My 3-year-old boy, his first day of pre-K, he was so excited. He knew some of the other kids that were attending, that he was going to be in their classroom. He was really thrilled about it. He has an infectious smile. I don't know if any of your children have just that smile people are talking about. He could light up a room, and he has a huge heart. He loves everything and everybody. The way the world's going, it's not so common to come by anymore. And I think that everyone, parents included, could do a better job of that. Using our hearts and our minds. And I just think that this needs to go a lot further than just the masks.
And I understand that.
Way further.
I do. And I think the point that Mr. Palmer was trying to make before Dr. Tepper jumped in is that for 19 months, I feel like a lot of folks think that we're not considering our kids over this issue. And we obviously are faced with the order, the advice from our solicitor, and the information that we get from the state. But for 19 months, we busted our rear ends to do the very best that we could for our kids. And to put them online earlier than any other school, as Dr. Tepper mentioned, to be in school longer last year than any other school in the Commonwealth, to provide them with opportunities to have as normal of an experience as they can. Dr. Tepper mentioned towards the end of the meeting here, we're talking about an outdoor homecoming. I don't know what other schools are doing it. Last year, we limited the number of kids that could come to homecoming. This year, or we didn't have homecoming, you're right. But we limited the number of kids that could come to prom to just juniors and seniors. We want to have as much normal as we can. So Mr. Maines went and found a venue big enough to put everyone in. It's outdoor.
Oh, I understand.
I know, and I'm just saying, like, we're trying as hard as we can. And we had an outdoor graduation, as I said before, when nobody else did. But right now, and I've said this to a lot of folks as you're coming in out there, right now we have an order that Mr. Nichols, through his knowledge and wisdom, has told us that it is lawful at this point. And it's not in the Constitution. You remember in 8th grade, I told you everything's not in the Constitution.
Yeah,
okay? And I understand where you're coming from.
One of the questions I had when the young speaker was up here to do was if Dr. Tepper could clarify mask exemption, because there were a lot of us that had them at the beginning of the school year, and we were told that they weren't so.
Mr. Riska, can you speak? I'm sorry, quick question on the stage. Everything goes through our pupil services, and Ms. Risco is in charge of that, so I don't want to misquote anything, that's why I'm turning it over to her.
The order does say that individuals with a medical condition may be exempt from mask wearing. On the Department of Education website, there is a list of answers to frequently asked questions. It was last updated on September 3rd, 2021. One of the questions reads, are individuals required to show proof of an exemption to the order. It reads, school entities must require all individuals 2 years of age and older to wear face coverings unless the individual has a medical or mental health condition or disability that precludes the wearing of a face covering. In accordance with Section 3 of the order, before an individual is exempted from the order, all alternatives to a face covering, including a face shield, should be exhausted. It is recommended that any exemption be in accordance with eligibility under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act or IDEA for such medical or mental health condition or disability. School entities should follow their established processes for determining student eligibility under those laws, including any medical documentation that they would normally require.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, so is it an either or for the face shield and the mask, or?
Sure.
Either or, I can wear a face covering.
And more specifically, if you go to your doctor and you say, my child can't wear a mask, the doctor could write out a medical narrative on that point, but the doctor also has to determine that a face shield wouldn't do the trick either. For several people, the face shield may work when the mask doesn't. So the doctor has to exhaust not only that the mask is a problem, but that the face shield is a problem too. And that's the way the order reads.
I think they're both the problem, the masks and the face shield.
We understand.
If you look at both of them, like the one that Mr. Palmer's wearing, or a face shield, like you're saying, you don't fit you properly everywhere. Dr. George, he probably knows that when you get fitted for a respirator, like if you're a painter or a fire department, they have to get fitted for theirs every year. And have to be completely clean shaven for that. I know the little ones don't have facial hair, but our high schoolers are starting to do that because they're getting puberty. And so the little medical masks you get in the box at Walmart, unless you bend that piece of metal, you can fit your finger down behind it.
Thank you.
The virus doesn't stop at a piece of fabric or a face shield. It will go right up under that face shield.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I just want to respond to Mr. Maples' comments a bit ago. I really need to start writing down my facts and figures and preparing better when I come to these things. But you're talking about just a few school districts, and I believe it's 2 in Butler County, 1 in York County that are suing the state over the governor's mask mandate. The statistics that I read were, I believe it was 50 out of like 504 school districts voted for mask mandates. So we've got roughly 450 districts in the Commonwealth who wanted mask optional. So if you're joining with the other school districts, strength in numbers, maybe, the rules of justice will prevail here, but we sit back and we do nothing. Well, then we read what we said. And one other comment I have is, those of us that want things mask optional, I'm not saying that somebody can't wear a mask. I mean, that's something that's thrown out there. I don't know where people get that. But I never understood why me wearing a mask protects you. You wearing your mask protects you. So I don't, see why I have to wear one. If your mask works, isn't your mask protecting you? I don't get that, okay? So I just wanted to throw that out there. I have a son who is in high school, and I spoke about him last time I was here. I went home and I told him, hey, one, you didn't have to wear a mask, mask optional. He had such an anxiety attack about not wearing the mask. So, you all got to him, all the peer people got to him, that I said, fine. I went for mask choice, wear your mask to school tomorrow. Because I was afraid people not going to call emailed Mr. Maine. He said, I know I spoke about David's medical condition, but at this point, I don't think I can even get him to school. So that's true.
Thank you.
Cindy Yossi again, I'm not going to talk about masks. I want to ask a question about your hazing policy. I want to know if the hazing policy, does it include seniority in any way? Because I've read the hazing policy, and it doesn't state anything about seniority. As far as like, my child is a senior cheerleader, okay? And I've had this conversation with Mr. Hyde. Therefore, she was told she's not allowed to do certain things or only allowed to do certain things because she's a senior, but because it's hazing. Those were the words used. That's a hazing issue. Like if all the seniors would do something, then that's wrong because it's a hazing issue. And I was just wondering, have we amended the hazing policy? I'm curious.
We can have, yeah, go ahead, Ms.
To include that.
Ms. Briscoe.
All of our sports coaches, as well as any adult in the district who supervises, whether paid or voluntarily a team, undergoes an anti-hazing training that I conduct along with Mr. Hyde. As a part of that training, we discuss activities that could or could not be considered as hazing. One of the examples is if a certain group of students, maybe the varsity students or the seniors or the juniors, are telling another group of students that they must or must not do something, such as all of the freshmen must always stay late and clean up after practice. It could be considered hazing under certain circumstances. One of the examples that I give in the training that is, again, a research-based training, it comes out of the Cleary Center, which is a national organization for the protection of violence and hazing on college campuses. One of the examples that they give is if students are purposefully excluding another group. In the training, I do clarify that that is not if a group of friends get together and have a sleepover, or if a group of friends get together and go out to the movies. In the example that you're talking about, if the seniors are purposefully getting together as a group of seniors and telling other players on the team that they're not permitted to do a team-led or a team-sponsored activity, that could be exclusive of the players who are not asked to join. If it's a group of friends who happen to all be in the same grade and happen to all be participating in the same event, movie, sleepover, dinner, that would not be considered hazing.
No.
So if you have specific questions, I would be happy to talk to you in more detail, because I wouldn't want
I
to
was
call it.
told that, like, captains for cheer couldn't be seniors because of hazing issues. I was told that the seniors couldn't have certain privileges as far as cheer goes because of hazing. So I just wanted to clarify if that's been an amendment to the hazing policy, because I know that Mr. Hyde met with the cheerleaders and had this discussion, and I was just curious as to why then, if that's hazing, why that discussion didn't happen with band, football, so on and so forth.
Actually, the hazing conversation happened with all.
Okay, but it wasn't discussed that, like, captains and so on and so forth
I
couldn't
don't think that was your message.
No, that is not part of the training. And specifically, we said that if a group of students who happen to be friends and happen to play the same sport or do the same activity want to get together, that is not considered hazing. It's a group of kids who want to hang out. And that same message was given to all of the coaches and advisors. And at the conclusion of the training, I made sure that everybody had my contact information. So if their players or their participants came to them with an idea for a team activity, if the coaches were ever concerned, they could contact me or they could contact Mr. Hyde for any kind of clarity.
But I can tell you my daughter is upset and feels hazed by the coaches, so to speak, because she's a senior and she's not getting what she rightfully has due to her since she was in second grade.
I would encourage you to speak with Mr. Hyde.
I will. Thank you.
We'll see if we can address it, okay?
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello. And I want to apologize that I interrupted earlier. That's not my character, so I apologize to you both. It is a very passionate thing for us, but I understand that you guys have a hard job. I know that some people have said it, and I even said it in my emails. My name is Sheila Gornick. Yes, we did. Yes. My stepson, his mom is here, and his dad is here, and we've been picking him up every day, taking him to school and picking him up. He is very polite. He's very respectful to every one of his teachers. He has gotten good grades from the time he was young. Last year, when he was online, he did not do as well as every other time. So they have consistently, no offense to anybody, and I know it's your job, but they have consistently asked him to do ECAS because he does not want to wear a mask. He does not want to do ECAS because he knows that his grades will be affected. Now, Mr. Nichols, I'm asking you if it is legal for them to stop giving him the homework that he is requesting. He goes to school, he gets kicked out, we do not complain, we come and get him. We are doing our diligence as parents, as step-parents to him, to bring him to school, to come and get him. He says, no thank you, we take him home. Now it is at the point, though, that he is not getting the homework, which he has every day completed and completed in excellence. Why is that okay?
And I'm not going to discuss educational aspects of individual students. By you coming up and identifying your son, that's your business to discuss. I'd be happy to discuss it with you, with the administrators privately, but as a board, because of the FERPA confidentiality, I can't talk about your son or anybody else's son individually. And so I'm sure we can talk about it and see where things are going and what can be done, but I can't talk about individual students in front of everybody else.
Well,
because it violates your son's right to privacy.
Well, he came up here and he said to you that the school is kicking him out and calling us every single day.
That doesn't matter. We can't talk about it in front of other people. He can talk about it to us if he wants, but I can't talk about it to him in front of other people.
Okay, well, we've been threatened, truancy on us. I mean, we take pictures when he's there. He has numerous pictures of other students wearing their masks inappropriately and of staff members wearing their masks very inappropriately or not wearing one at all. And I don't care whether they wear a mask or not. I'm not here to debate that. You can wear a mask, you don't have to. He chooses not to, and so I would like to talk to you because I do not feel that that is. We understand that you're requiring him to wear a mask. We bring him as the parents, mom, dad, bring him to school, do our due diligence, say, okay, we understand, can we have paperwork that states that he's breaking the law? We've been given paperwork that says the CDC recommends, and it's a strong recommendation, which is not a law, but I understand you keep saying a mandate, it is a recommendation.
Ma'am, the CDC isn't the law. In fact, the CDC had made the recommendation for masks, and yet this board attempted to open school with masks optional. So it's not the CDC. That was guidance, and I agree with you. And I didn't enforce it because it was only guidance, and because I didn't feel it was locally directed. But the order that came down from the Department of Health is locally directed to all school districts, and it's from Pennsylvania. It's not just a federal guidance. I've made a distinction between guidance and orders since this pandemic started. I was the one that figured out how we could do the graduation outside. We were the only ones to do it, and we actually worked within this quote-unquote guidance to get that done. But let me just do this. Let's try to accomplish something. I can't talk about your son in public, but I'd be happy to meet with you and talk to you. So if you give me a call tomorrow at my office, I'm just in the road, I'd be happy to talk to you as the solicitor of the school district and see what we can do, but I can't do it tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just, real quick, I just wanted to say that was the paperwork that the school had given us that stated what the CDC said. It's not what I'm saying. It is paperwork that we received.
Okay.
So that's all I want to
Okay, thank you so much.
Just a question for you. Why are we accepting a mandate from the Secretary of Health when she doesn't have a medical degree? She has a law degree. Should the Secretary of Health not have a medical degree? But I mean, if somebody's going to give us medical advice, don't you want to come from somebody who has a medical degree?
But it's not our decision.
Yeah, it's in the.
And she's also not confirmed. The state has not confirmed her as our Secretary of Health.
Yeah,
So, I mean, that's a point that
it's a good point.
our senators and stuff have not confirmed her.
We understand, that's a good point. Thank you.
At this time, I'll move for adoption resolution number 73, adjournment.